Our essential question for this section of the unit, it's how are we connected to our environment? So in your journal, I want you just to tell me, what do you know about our environment and how we're interconnected, how we're connected with that environment? Okay, so just tell me anything you know. We're going to fill out an anticipation guide about how we interact with our environment and see some of the impacts that we have on our environment as humans. Just like our other anticipation guides, there's a statement here, and you're going to decide whether you think that statement's true or false. And then now we're adding a justification. So you're going to work with your partner to write down why you think that statement is either true or false next to it. Okay?
It's true because the salad has more nutrients and it has more calcium for our energy, so we can have energy. And the steak, it's more like fat. You get more like greasier. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's why we're over there trying to get oil to import over here, because we already ran out in the United States. So
I think it's true because the fish is getting harmed where it lives.
And what do you mean by getting harmed?
It's like the water is polluted by trash.
By trash, okay. What else could the water be polluted by?
Plants get their energy straight from the sun, right? Mm-hmm. When a cow eats it, it takes some of the energy that it took from the plant. Mm-hmm. And then when we eat the cow, we get that energy. However, there's lesser of it. All right, so how would I write that in a sentence? That's my question.
How you could say that? How do you guys think you could say it in a sentence?
An animal eats it, it takes part of the nutrients, so when it digests or whatever, half of it, and we eat the other half. I don't know.
Many polar bears have been drowning. I don't think it's true.
Because polar bears are used to their habitats and stuff, and so
They're adapted to the environment they live.
If you've noticed as you came in today, there's little stations with pictures and graphs and quotes along the walls. You're going to work in a pair and you're going to move through a couple of the stations, and you're going to write down what you think. You're going to write down your opinions and your ideas about what you see. And keep in the back of your mind our essential question: how are we connected to the environment? So, and how'd you figure that out from here?
They're just talking about the imagination.
he said, it's not really like your imagination. They're really like out to get you.
People are really out to get you. And did you see this right here?
Yeah,
the newspaper article? Go ahead and finish up your last thoughts on that station, and then rotate around the classroom to your next station.
Because it's overfished. Too many people is fishing.
Did anyone see anything when they were going around at the stations that surprised you or that was interesting?
The trash is overflowed, and the chicken and the animal was eating it, and then they died because they couldn't digest. And then when they were dissected, inside their body was the trash that wasn't digested.
That it's been increasing for the past 100 years?
What year?
Like since 1860 to 2005, the temperature has increased a lot, and I think that for the next years, like it's still going to be going up in the future.
You guys just looked at your stations was how how humans have impacted our environment and how it's changing. And in the last couple days, we've learned about the biomes and all the organisms and plants, animals that live there. Today, we're going to learn how we classify those organisms in ecology. And this understanding how we classify them is going to help you understand and answer our essential question of how are we connected to our environment? Because we have to understand what the plants and animals are in the environment in order to know what kind of impact we have on them. On these cards, they have names of animals and plants that live in like a temperate rainforest. That was one of the biomes we looked at. All right, and I want you as your group, as your table team, to just put these into any groupings you can, any classifications that you want to. I don't care how you do it. It's up to you to figure out how you want to group your organisms.
What's a bullfrog? A frog like a bull?
What were the biomes you guys were thinking about that they could be from? You don't know?
Yeah.
You just thought that may be one way you want to classify them? Yeah. How have you started classifying them?
Plants, bacteria, things that fly, things that walk.
Okay, so based on how they kind of live their life, their characteristics, okay, that's fine. How did some groups classify their animals? I heard a couple groups tell me. What did some of you do?
Where they live and stuff.
Okay, so where they live, the type of environment they live in. Anybody else do something different than those two groups? No? What'd you guys do? Okay, so they broke theirs down into predators and prey. I'm going to show you how, in ecology, how we classify animals. Okay, in a couple different ways. So open up your science notebook, and the title of the notes, the next page, the title of these notes are Classifying Organisms in Ecology. Earlier in the year when we were learning about photosynthesis, right? What kind of organisms photosynthesize? Plants. And what do we consider plants? We call them something else. Producer. In ecology, we have another name for producers. We call them something else. Means about the same thing, just where they get their energy from. Okay, and we call them autotrophs. Autotroph. Do you guys know how we could break this down into the suffix and the prefix and into two different parts? Okay, auto and troph. Well, what does auto mean? Self. Okay, so self, and what does troph mean? Does anyone know?
Energy, the way you make energy.
Okay, so the way you make energy or get energy, right? We talked about another classification of organisms. So if you're not a producer, you're a consumer, right? And we call these, in ecology, these types of organisms, heterotrophs. So what if we're going to break that word into two parts? First part is what? Hetero. And going back to genetics, we talked about heterozygous. What does hetero mean? Different. Two or different, right? What I want you to do now is go back to your list of your group of organisms and reclassify them into either autotrophs or heterotrophs. What's the other word we learned today for it? That means heterotroph, yep. Okay, so now we have our autotrophs here. Now we're going to look, we have a big group of heterotrophs, right? There's a bunch of them. Now we're going to look how we break those down and how we classify heterotrophs. Herbivores. And herbivores, as Oscar said, eat only plants. But we're not going to use the word plants. What's a word we can use? It's a new vocabulary we learned today. No. Eat only what? What are plants? Autotrophs. So carnivores. Let's say you didn't know what a carnivore was, but you spoke Spanish. What would be your best guess as to what carnivores eat? Meat. Why? Why would you say meat? Carne, right? Like carne asada. So meat eaters. So now you're going to take your heterotrophs and put those into these categories. Herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, scavengers, and decomposers. Ask your partners first, because you'd be surprised how much they probably know about these different plants and animals. And now that you've classified your heterotrophs by the way they eat and the way they get their energy and their food, I want you to work with your partner and come up with one or two questions that you have.
How do we find fossils if decomposers decompose things?
Right?
Yeah.
When we're buried, do we like get decomposed?
Are there any scavengers that might be carnivores?
I'm going to give you a couple minutes to talk to your partner about what you learned today about how we classify organisms and how that relates to our essential question of how are we connected to our environment.
For example, what they eat, where they live.
Their biomes.
It just goes in a cycle all over. Once they die, they go into the plants, and then the plants eat. The bigger an animal eats the plant, and then bigger eats that animal.
I want you to do, now that you've talked and discussed with your partner or your group, go back and in your bell work journal, rewrite and re-reflect on what you did today. Just write down what you guys talked about. What did you learn about classifying organisms, and how does that show us how we're connected to our environment? Could someone share about what they learned about how we classify organisms, maybe a sentence or two, or how we're connected to our environment?
We're destroying our environment.
Okay, and what gave you evidence for that? What did you see today?
Those little baby birds that ate the trash, and they could play a role in the environment they were. And with those little birds right there, there could be more of the prey around. And
what did you learn about classifying organisms?
There's more than one way to classify them.